After that meeting, Paige said.
One design off or something.
Welcome to the November 25th, 2024 meeting of the Sandusky City Commission. We'll have an invocation offered by Commissioner Murray, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
God, as we anticipate gathering with family and friends this Thanksgiving week, we express to you our own gratitude for the ability to live in this wonderful city that you've given us, with the beautiful lake at our edge that we are able to enjoy and to which we are entrusted as stewards. We thank you for the camaraderie that we have with our colleagues here at this table, at the table across from us and throughout the city. I know I join all 250 people of the city of who make up the employees of the city of Sandusky, and more than that, who appreciate the opportunity to serve the residents of this city. We thank you for those residents, for our neighbors, for their colorful differences of opinion, sometimes just their colorful nature, and for both their diversity and their embrace of that diversity and each other. We ask that you provide us with the wisdom needed to come together to make decisions, maybe not always agreeing, but seeking agreement, seeking understanding and common ground. For this we thank you. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Myers, you call the roll.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Brady?
Here.
Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Pajali?
Here.
Mr. Kuntz?
Here.
Mr. Crable?
Here.
Ms. Spargo? Here. Mr. Waddington?
Here.
Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of November the 12th, 2024. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the November 12th meeting as presented.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, that motion will be approved, and hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Tonight, we have the honor of swearing in a new firefighter. Mr. Orzak, will you do that honor, please?
I, Tavion Murphy, recognizing my fundamental duty as a firefighter of the City of Sandusky Fire Department, do solemnly swear to uphold the standards of my profession by safeguarding the lives and property of our citizens against the threat of fire and disaster.
I, Tavion Murphy, recognize my fundamental duties as a firefighter of the City of Sandusky Fire Department, do solemnly swear to uphold my standards of my profession by safeguarding the lives and property of our citizens against the threat of fire and disaster.
I promise to obey the duly constituted laws of the United States of America, the State of Ohio, the City of Sandusky, and to accept the badge of my office as a symbol of public faith, leadership, and trust, to be honored for as long as I remain a firefighter of the City of Sandusky Fire Department.
I promise to obey the duty constituted laws of the United States of America, the State of Ohio, the City of Sandusky, and to accept the badge of my office as a symbol of public faith, leadership, and trust, to be honored for as long as I remain a firefighter of the City of Sandusky Fire Department.
I will continually strive to serve our community and to be an influence for good before my fellow officers and firefighters to the best of my ability, so help me.
I will continuously strive to serve our community and be an influence for good before my fellow firefighters and officers to the best of my ability, so help me.
Congratulations.
Just a little background on Tavion. Tavion resides in the city of Parma with his fiance and one-year-old son. Prior to getting hired by the Sandusky Fire Department, he worked for the Sheffield Township Fire Department part-time for about a year. He has his firefighter 1 and 2 certification, is a certified EMT, and is currently enrolled in Tri-C's paramedic program. Tavion told me that his interest was piqued in the fire department and becoming a firefighter because he witnessed the fire department at work. extinguishing a fire at his neighbor's house when he was a young adult, and that's kind of what got him to choose this profession. He's going to be on number 1 shift under the direction of Captain Matt Lesh, or I'm sorry, Captain Jason Resch. They're kind of close. Congratulations, Tavian, and welcome to the city of Sandusky.
Tavian, we usually require new firefighters to speak for about a half an hour. We'll waive that for tonight because we have a very busy agenda, and I know your brothers are eager to get back to work. Thanks for being here.
That's great.
Next on our agenda, we have a presentation on our housing policy recommendations. That will be kicked off by Colleen Gilson, and it will be conducted by our Chief Planner, Aaron Blair.
Thank you. In summer of this year, the Department of Community Development, through Chief Planner Aaron Blair's leadership, issued a memo to the city manager summarizing various pro-housing policy changes and program development needed to access expected state funding opportunities toward increasing housing supply in Sandusky. The memo in today's presentation will outline a series of recommendations for which we seek your input, your guidance, and support to bring back legislation that will intensify our ability to stimulate the market, attracting housing development of all types. As you know, the 2023 Housing Needs Assessment for the Firelands region identified a need for more than 1,600 rental units and over 2,700 for-sale units to support healthy housing market for existing and prospective residents over the next 5 years. Right now, a quick measure of project development the city has involvement in can account for nearly 170 for-sale and 150 rental units in the pipeline. To reach a healthy market, however, we must be aggressive, we must think differently, and we must respond to the state's forthcoming funding opportunities that will incentivize housing development where local governments have adopted strategies the Ohio Senate Select Committee recommends. I thank Aaron Blair for her leadership on this, for her close study of these issues, and look forward to working with her and all of you to bring productive, smart, and effective housing policies in 2025. Aaron?
Thank you. I appreciate taking the time to have this discussion at the table today, and I'm going to walk you through several items that the state has outlined, as Ms. Gilson said. We're expecting a funding pool to be created to incentivize housing in the state. We're not the only ones facing a housing shortage. It's nationwide, and there's a lot of great brains and minds and advocates working on this right now. The overall purpose is to attract more types of housing to the city of Sandusky. The state has outlined 12 policy items, and we're going to go through many of those today. What we're expecting is that if we have completed to however they define it, 3 of those policy items, we will have access to this funding pool. And if we have completed 6 of them, we will either have priority access or access to more funding as that comes down the pipeline. We also know that the need has been well identified in our region for housing through the housing needs assessment. We also hear from residents on a daily basis the needs for housing. Our vacancy rates are so low that almost every unit is filled, and people that might want to move out of an apartment to buy a house can't find a house to buy. Someone that might have too much house, they want to move into somewhere smaller, can't find a way to downsize. And so we're seeing those barriers. It's also a barrier to employment. If you're thinking about expanding your business or bringing a new business here, if you don't think there's enough housing for employees, then that's a barrier for our economic development in the region as well. We also know we have great opportunity in the city of Sandusky to attract new housing. We have potential sites for redevelopment, for infill development, and empty sites for new development. We have the job center, or the economic center of the region. We have well-connected infrastructure, walkable streets, access to sewer, water, great utilities and transit. We have available sites, whether privately owned. We also have a lot of city-owned sites available for development. And we have a lot of architecture out there that is prime for readaptation and renovation potential to preserve existing units. We're not starting from scratch. We've made significant progress on several of the items that the state has outlined. One, including like readying sites. And for example, we have, developer lined up for the Sandusky Cabinet site. We did a lot of study clearing that site, or the South Side plan. We've engaged with residents to visualize what housing types they want to see in the future. And we're conducting infrastructure projects to enable housing on sites that the city owns. So those are just a couple examples. So we have made quite a bit of progress, and this is an opportunity to think about what more we could be doing in the future and right on the timeline. So I've organized the presentation into 3 primary pathways to new housing. One is making new land available to different types of housing. The second is removing barriers to development, and the third is providing incentives to attract development. So for making new land available, we've already done a lot of work to ready sites. So there's 3 other policy items that the state has outlined in their policy objectives for cities to consider. One is allowing quadplexes, which would be 4-unit buildings in more areas of the city, allowing accessory dwelling units, and I'll explain what those are, and just overall reducing land area that's dedicated to only single-family housing. Those are all strategies to bring in what folks call the missing middle. And I wanted to introduce this because if you read articles about housing types, you're often going to be faced with this term and seeing this term missing middle housing. And what that means is essentially a range of housing types that are more units than a single-family property, but less units than a larger, mid-rise or high-scale apartment building. Those are row homes like the brick homes on Adams Street, or smaller apartment buildings or duplexes that you really see in a city like ours in traditional design from the late 1800s to mid-1900s. We were building all these types of housing in all kinds of neighborhoods, but for many years they've been illegal, and we've been mostly producing only single-family homes across the nation, or larger apartments for rent in bigger cities. So when you look at strategies to reintroduce missing middle housing, you're typically introducing housing types that fit really nicely within existing neighborhoods. They don't change the character of existing neighborhoods. They just allow for more housing types to meet broader demographic needs. They can help with housing affordability and support economic growth. This is an example. These are 2 missing middle housing unit products that are being built right now on East 89th Street in Cleveland. These are actually 8-unit apartment buildings. So what you're looking at is 16 new units of housing on currently a primarily single-family residential street. And the reason they're so effective is that they've taken design cues from this surrounding housing, so they really fit well within that neighborhood. And instead of 2 new units, we're looking at 16 new units here. The state is asking cities to not contemplate 8-unit buildings, but just 4-unit buildings. And quadplexes can take on a lot of different shapes, from modern design to traditional neighborhood design, depending on the size of the lot and the architect or property owner, what they would want to build. And even, you can see in this example of a 1920s built quadplex in Cleveland, this type of product was very commonly built within single-family neighborhoods in that time frame of when the city of Sandusky was developed. Currently in the city, quadplexes would be allowed in only 4 zoning districts. And the state policy describes allowing quadplex housing in at least 75% of the territory of the municipal corporation. And in order to satisfy this, that would have us consider amending our zoning text to allow units up to quadplex in all zoning districts that allow residential. If we did that, that would get us to 73.744%. So we could see how they define it, whether that would qualify us, or if we would want to look at maybe a roadside business district or our commercial district that might be suitable for quadplexes as well in order to hit that 75%. The next housing type they'd have us consider are accessory dwelling units, and we have had some conversation about these with Planning Commission, so that's a conversation that's been kind of simmering in the city of Sandusky for a while. These two images are examples of an accessory dwelling unit, like another living unit in the backyard of a single-family home. On the left in this image is a garage that was an existing garage that someone converted into an accessory dwelling unit. And then on the right here is an example of what one could look like when it's actually attached to the home. And accessory dwelling units are really popular with, if you have the mother-in-law suite concept where you have an aging parent that needs more care but still wants their own independent space. They can be an affordability strategy for someone that owns a home and they want to live in the big unit, rent the small unit. Or maybe when they get older, their family needs change, they want to live in the smaller unit, rent the big unit. So currently, accessory dwelling units are not permitted in any of our zoning. It's not defined in our code. So the consideration would be to amend our zoning code to create a definition for that, where they're appropriate in Sandusky, and how we could enable those to be able to be constructed, whether they're detached, attached, above the garage, a garage conversion, a basement, an attic. That would be for us to define what's appropriate for the city. The final category within that, making new land available, is an overall metric to reduce single-family zoning land area. So currently, the city of Sandusky, about 22% of our city land is zoned for single-family only. That's everything that's shown in yellow on this map. And so the consideration would be to include duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and accessory dwelling units within those land areas. And if we did that, it would satisfy this requirement. So if we look at that quadplex and ADU legislation and making those changes, then it would permit those uses across the city. The next category is removing barriers to development. So that can take the shape of removing or reducing parking requirements, and then looking at the permit review process, which I've kind of combined into one slide. The first consideration of parking requirements would be to reduce those, or really to let each project say what kind of parking needs they have. Currently in our central business district, we don't have any parking requirements, but when we see new products built, such as the Water Street lofts, they do tend to build parking because people do want parking spaces. But changing our regulations could allow each of those projects to decide, what their parking needs would be, depending on the context, the availability of street parking and that sort of thing. And the next would be to look at our permit review process. This one, we're not quite sure what exactly the state means by this, and surely they would be defined when they create this funding pool. It may be targeted at larger cities. I know sometimes it takes months to get through the permitting process in a larger city, whereas in the city of Sandusky, it takes weeks. So it's much more expedited in a smaller city. But one thing we think that could be really advantageous for this is to look toward adopting pre-approved plan drawings. So this would be already pre-designed architectural drawings that someone could use that are pre-approved for the building department, and then they apply to their site, make sure they meet the zoning requirements for setbacks and everything, and that can really expedite the process. The image on this slide is the cover of the pre-approved building plan catalog in South Bend, Indiana. And they have this many sets of building plans that people can use, I think for a fee. Some places are free, some places are for a fee. And this is a drawing that the South Bend, Indiana approved plan set uses to show how those different types that are in that catalog can fit within the existing neighborhood. So this is a great illustration of that kind of missing middle. There's one 6-unit apartment building towards the end of the street. There's a couple duplexes, a couple medium-sized single-family homes, a couple small single-family homes, a couple ADUs, accessory dwelling units. So I thought was a really great illustration because it mimics the traditional lot sizes of the blocks in the city of Sandusky. I also listened to a webinar this week. Greater Ohio Policy Center is working on pre-approved building plans that cities in Ohio could use. So I'm going to keep really close watch on that and hopefully be able to take some of those and move forward with them here. The third category is providing development incentives. So this can be reducing water and sewer hookup costs for development, providing incentives for modular housing, and providing incentives related to the increased density in order to create affordable units. So water and sewer hookup costs in the city of Sandusky are set by ordinance, and there's currently no mechanism to waive those fees. So if we wanted to do that to incentivize development, we'd have to bring specific legislation for a project to you for a vote. We could potentially create criteria for when a project might satisfy, the criteria for getting a water sewer hookup cost fee waived, and then change our ordinance to waive the fees to reflect those instances. That would be an example of how to do this. Another is an incentives for modular housing. So modular housing is essentially pre-built sections of homes that are brought to the site and assembled on permanent foundations. They can really look seamless to the neighboring housing and often are more affordable than traditional stick-built housing. So we could consider, if we do the pre-approved building plans, we could consider having modular incentives in there. The Welcome Home Ohio project, which we're working on right now, the state-funded project, is using modular housing. So we're going to get an example of what that can look like, which we hope will be really nicely done and look really great in the city. So we'll get some experience with that coming up. And then finally, the density incentives for affordable housing. This can be tricky to figure out the exact metric, but essentially what you're saying is the zoning would allow this many units. If you also add a couple units that are fixed rent for a specific percentage of annual median income, fixed affordable rent, then you can build more. So say we allow 4 units, but you could build up to 6 units if 2 of them are fixed rent affordable. That would be an example of a density incentive. So our recommendations is that we look at those zoning text amendments to enable those missing middle housing types. So enabling accessory dwelling units in residential districts, enabling unit types up to quadplexes in residential districts, and then reducing parking minimums to 1 parking space per residential unit. And then looking at the central business district area, maybe expanding a little bit more where a 0 parking minimum might work, and then adding that density bonus for affordable units. We also want to identify a timeline and RFQ process for creation of a pre-approved building plans catalog for the city of Sandusky next year. And one thing I'd like to add before, I'd love to hear from you on each of these. I think it's important to also mention that development takes time. So when we're looking at making changes to our zoning, we're just talking about making more options available for property owners to decide what to do with their property. These things take a long time. Development typically takes several years from an idea to, walking into a finished project. Anybody that's been involved in any kind of renovation or design will know that it takes some time. So if we use this drawing that the South Bend, Indiana provided, this is the existing homes in their drawing. So it's an existing block. It has quite a bit of vacant land, probably from some demolition over time. And maybe in the first couple years, somebody's already got their grandma living with them and they decide to put a kitchen to make her unit independent. Maybe somebody was looking at a land bank lot and they built a house on it. The next couple years, a couple other people build on their property on the block. Maybe you build some momentum. People are really understanding that you've got your pre-approved plans, you see one of the multi-units come online, or a couple other buildings, and then by 15 years you might see that street starts to look more filled in. Maybe by 20 years that you see that block actually filled in. And that's not to say that's exactly how it would work in any given block, but it's just to remind folks that this type of change can feel really organic and not change a neighborhood overnight. That it just would kind of, if we enable this type of housing, it's one step in allowing more development to come into the city and create more units for people that already live here and people that want to live here. So I'm gonna go back to the recommendations, and I would love to hear from you all, your reactions to these, and Ultimately, most of these would go through Planning Commission first, and we would convene those discussions. We would likely have community input, certainly through presentations like this, but it would come to City Commission for final approval. So we really just wanted to get a great idea of kind of where you're at with these sort of things and some direction to move forward. Thank you.
Comments or questions, Commissioners? Mr. Murray, sounds like you have something to say.
Well, I mean, it's been a long time getting to this, right? Because we have as a country built out this housing shortage decade by decade by decade. We've done it in major part by just having this ideal of the Brady Bunch home, and we don't live in a Brady Bunch world anymore. We need to increase the number of options available for construction and for people to live in. And I think you're absolutely right. This isn't going to be a shocking change to anybody. These will be gradual changes that occur over a period of time and really return us to where we were about 100 years ago in terms of the housing mix that we built. And you're right to point to a couple of vestiges of that left in the city of Sandusky. But if we don't take proactive steps to change the trajectory that we're on, we're just going to continue to have a housing shortage. We will continue to starve businesses of the workers we need. We will continue to starve families of the dollars they could be spending on things other than housing. And so this is a win-win for the community. Yes, some people will be, they won't like the change, but as you point out, it's going to occur slowly over a period of time. So I applaud these efforts. It's going to take us decades to grow out of the problem that we have, but as you point out, it's a nationwide problem. If we take these steps now, we position ourselves to be ahead of our competitive communities across the state of Ohio, so that we are ready to have to accept the funding and hopefully have an advantage in terms of being able to tie into additional funding in order to be able to make this happen. So I thank the Planning Department for the work that you've put together, or that you put forth so far, and the plan that you've set before us today, and I look forward to legislation in the future.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioners? Ms. Blair, it occurred to me, and I appreciate the work that you and Gilson and your entire department has done. This is there is some low-hanging fruit here that we can pick off easily and make changes and move forward. A concern that I have, though, is that for decades we have treated the single-family home and the neighborhood as sacred. And now we are going to interject multifamily housing. We're going to increase the density. Mm-hmm. So a concern that I have is that we should be prepared, and I think we can get prepared and be prepared for some social problems that are going to come with that increased density. When you put 4 families on a piece of ground that used to hold just one family, your problems can spiral up also. So this does not, this plan and this direction does not come without challenges, but I'm confident that we can overcome those. And you're right, I'm counting on you being right in that this isn't going to happen in the next 2 or 3 months. This is going to happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years, gradually. And I'm glad that you've mentioned a critical thing, and that is having outreach to the community and listening to what the community wants, or the community will approve, the community will go for. That's so critically important. Thank you for considering that. And for the work you've done, this is a great start. Additional comments, Commissioner? Mr. Crable.
Thank you for the work. It's very much appreciated. I think you know what my interest has been in improving the quality of housing and simply the volume of housing that's available. I echo some of the concerns that Mr. Brady had. I think one of the challenges is when you start to increase the density of housing, density of the number of families in a given fixed area. I think you can as he said, increase some of the social consequences of that. I need some time to absorb this. And I have no idea what your timeline is as far as trying to, get actions from this body. But I'm going to need some time to think about this. One of the questions I would have initially is, Sandusky is a fixed plot of land. We have only so much in the way of developable property. I know we've had conversations in which I've mentioned the old GNC Foundry property on West Monroe. There's not anything that I heard here this evening that talks about taking advantage of existing open land that can be developed, maybe first, okay, and seeing what comes of that. And perhaps the quadplex idea, or more duplex or townhouses or whatever we might want to see developed on those properties, as opposed to making impacts on existing neighborhoods first. But having said that, I'll reserve making any other comments until I've had a little more time to try to absorb this and maybe have some questions, other than in this setting.
Thanks for that comment. And if I may, the GNC Foundry is a great example of a site that we really want to see what could that look like and what would be appropriate in that neighborhood. Right now, our zoning options are limited, so we could, if we think maybe 1 or 2 quad units could be helpful there, well, then we'd have to zone just a dot of that. Or if we zone the whole thing multifamily, for example, we could get a tower there, which I don't think would be appropriate. So if we enabled some zoning changes that will allow that flexibility within neighborhoods, it might help us, be able to solicit some drawings from development teams that would be kind of a mixed neighborhood like that and work really nicely.
Additional comments, Commissioner?
May I say one more thing? I really hope that there is, in all of this, an interest in ownership, owner-occupied, as opposed to just developing more rental property. And I can go into details on that at some future point, but let me just be on the record in that regard.
Additional comments?
Real quick.
Mr. Coons.
One of the things that I'm interested in, I've expressed this quite a bit since I've been on this commission. I like the project that we have when we actually purchased the Osborne building, right, for the elderly. I've talked about this quite a bit, and it kind of ties into what Jeff said about some of this available space and property. You mentioned the GNC Foundry area, but really need to look at some of these units that are more like 16, 20, 24, because we talk about the social implications that come from more density, but I'm always concerned about the density that already exists with people who are living in 2-bedroom apartments, 5, 6 of them, 3 bedrooms, 8, 9 of them. And so that's there, and there might be some issues that we have with that, but it's not overwhelming. So I think that when we begin to look at some of these other complexes that are 20, 24, 32, that will alleviate some of that, because people don't want to live on top of each other. And that's what's happening right now. So I'm only saying that to encourage you all to just wrap your arms around how that can be done. I know there was some talk about working with community development corporations. I know that that's not my realm. I'm thinking kind of in a visionary sense without knowing all that stuff. But people are already living on top of each other. So when we talk about density, I need to wrap my arms around what that really means.
Yeah.
Additional comments?
Mr. Chair, I would say, Dr. Kuntz, that's one of the things that, when everybody says density, it means so many different things in our community, because I look at my street where I live and it's dense. I mean, I have a driveway like this between each house, so it's dense. But first of all, I want to applaud, Colleen and Aaron for doing this, because this is obviously, Commissioner Murray said this is nationwide, and we need to be in the forefront of it. And you can tell by listening to everyone that everyone has a little bit of a different idea, but everyone's not like worlds apart on it. I think we need a little bit of everything. And what does that look like? So I just want to applaud you to get this to the forefront and let the city know that we continue to work at this. We're not going to be behind the 8 ball on this. We're going to continue to move forward and do what we can for everybody. And number one, we want people to stay here. We want people to move here. We want people to build here. And there should be, like I said, some of everything. So thank you very much for getting this conversation out there. And I look forward to it to continue.
Additional comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Jolly.
Of course, I applaud the good work that the planning department does and what you two have done. And I think it's no secret how I feel about some of this with Aaron. The ADUs, I just kind of look at that as more rental housing. If we could have a requirement where they had to be owner occupied, I fear that maybe it is a mother-in-law suite, and then somebody passes on, and the next thing you know, you got 2 transit units that you didn't have before. The single family, did you say we only had 20% single family in the city?
22% of the city land area, yes.
Okay. So, and I've made it known, my entire career with the city and the county, people that moved out of the city said they moved out because there was too much rental housing, and they continue to say that to this day. So I think we should move slowly on this. I went to Columbus over the weekend. I couldn't believe the housing that was going down 23, brand new housing. Now, maybe it isn't affordable, but people are building housing. And what bothers me a little bit is government has a tendency, when something happens, to overreact. And we could end up 10 years down the road with all this housing that is vacant because we built too much housing. We reacted to the extreme. I think we ought to look at this closely. I don't have a problem with a lot of it. Now, the incentive for modular, are there any restrictions on modular homes now?
No. It would just count as a same thing as a stick-built home.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with incentives, although I don't know if I would want to go the water route at the state, the water incentives at this stage of the game. So those are just my comments, and I'll be happy to work with you as we move forward.
Chairman.
Mr. Murray.
May I just clarify one point? Ms. Blair, I think that you indicated that 21% of the city is housed or is zoned for single-family housing. I do not believe that you indicated that 22% of the housing in the city is owner-occupied. I think the
No,
census
that's
data
like
indicate.
55.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Dramatically higher, yes.
Yes.
Good.
It still seems low.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Jolly.
one last comment. This is nationwide, right? So it would apply to anybody can come in for this money, the villages, the townships, the counties, everybody can come in, right?
The state money?
Yeah.
What we don't know if it'll be available only to municipal corporations or if it'll be available to counties and townships. They haven't completely drafted that.
All right, thank you.
If there are no other comments, Ms. Blair, you can stay right where you are, because the next item on our agenda is the zone map amendment for 518 Jackson Street that I believe you're going to chair. And as this is a public hearing, we'll entertain comments from the public as well as from commission at the conclusion of your presentation.
Thank you, Commission President Brady. So this is a public hearing. I'd like to open for a zone map amendment by recommendation of the Planning Commission for parcel 56-68012 to rezone the property at 518 Jackson Street from public facilities to residential multifamily. This is an example of a project of someone thinking about creative housing solutions for the city of Sandusky. So this was a nunnery. It was part of the adjacent school and has been vacant for some time. And the property owner would like to turn this back into housing, and the zoning district would enable a resident family and rooms for rent in this historic structure. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended this rezoning at their regularly scheduled meeting on September 25th, 2024.
Questions or comments from the audience, from the public? Questions or comments from commission? Mr. Jones.
Mr. Chairman, the planning commission was unanimous on moving forward on this project, and we were assured, my one concern was much like I just expressed to Ms. Blair, was the management of this property and the fact that it's going to be more like a rooming house type of operation with a couple of bathrooms. But the gentlemen are in the audience tonight, and they assured me that they would run tight management, and I think there was going to be a manager on site, if I recall correctly.
There's specific rooming house regulations in our code that specifies that it be managed by a resident family or a resident manager. The size of the bedrooms, the number of the bathrooms, the accessibility to the kitchen, things like that. So we do have pretty clear code on the environmental health and housing standards of how to operate a project like this.
Thank you, Ms. Blair. So that did give me a comfort level.
Sure. Ms. Blair, this is totally different than transient rental.
Correct. Those would be long-term units. Their target is likely resident nurses that are here for 2-3 months, or someone that's here for some time to look for a house to purchase, or remote workers that are traveling and want to live somewhere for a few months at a time. So they're seeing a need, and when we know that there is a need for all different types of housing, so that's and also a chance to save a historic structure. The land use that they're suggesting it won't actually rechange the configuration of this building very much, because it was already built out to have private rooms and good circulation for a number of individuals to live in the home.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Murray.
The project is interesting because it points out what's old is new again. And this was a common type of housing, again, about 100 years ago to 80 years ago. Very valuable in terms of a mix that could be provided to the entire community. And I just think it's interesting that we're finding solutions in what we have done before.
Additional comments, commissioners?
Mr. Chair, Aaron, how many units are going to be in there?
I think it was 12, maybe. Was it 12?
Yeah, it's in the range of 10.
And each unit does not have its own bathroom, so
No, it'd be one unit essentially with specific private rooms for rent, and I believe it would be up to 12 people, like the resident family plus 10 rooms, I think is what the code would allow, if I recall correctly. It was not more than 12.
Okay. So no further questions. I will declare this hearing closed.
You'll see this is in your agenda for legislation tonight.
Ms. Blair, we have another public hearing that I think you're going to chair, so stay where you are. On Ferndale Drive parcel east of Cold Creek.
Thank you. This is a zone map amendment, opening a public hearing by recommendation of the Planning Commission for a portion of the existing parcel 60.00261 to rezone what will be 3 new parcels that are going to be created as part of a major subdivision process from public facilities to R175 single-family residential. So we're conducting the public hearing tonight. You'll see this legislation come through once the final plat of the subdivision is complete. Essentially, this is a portion of a parcel. They're going to create 3 new parcels here, new single-family parcels. And then you can see the extension, Ferndale Drive. This is just east of the Cold Creek subdivision. So Ferndale Drive kind of ends in a stub. They're going to extend Ferndale Drive in order to enable development of a single-family home. They're going to start with one in the center and then have one on each side, probably for their grown children. That's their kind of vision of the development. So like I said, there's a plat. The preliminary plat has already been seen and approved by Planning Commission, the same meeting that unanimously approved the zoning. And then that final plat of the subdivision will come through, and then we'll do the zoning legislation at that time.
Comments from the audience regarding this public hearing? Comments from the commission regarding this public hearing?
Are there
Mr. Crable.
Are there public services to these sites now? Water, sewer?
It's all, a couple things are at the intersection of Ferndale and Cold Creek, and then a couple things are going to be brought, or at the edge of Ferndale. So the major subdivision process goes through the construction documentation of how Ferndale Drive gets extended, how all the utilities come into it. So they'll be constructing that. It also will have a line item for inspection, and then it'll get dedicated to the city after. And that's all very specifically articulated in the final plat for the subdivision process.
Is the cost of that something that the city bears?
It is not, is the property owner's cost.
Okay.
Additional comments, Commissioner? Exciting to have a development within the city limits to build homes in. That's something that doesn't happen very often in our community. Good thing. I'll declare this public hearing closed. You may step down now, Ms. Blair.
Yeah.
Any residents with comments regarding tonight's agenda items, please step to the podium and share with us your name and address and your thoughts on agenda items. No one rushing, seeing no one rushing to the microphone, we'll move on. Commissioner, you have before you several communications from staff recommending various pieces of legislation. Can I have a motion to accept those communications?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second discussion. Without objection, the motion be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Commissioners, we have a record number of items on the consent agenda this evening.
Indeed.
16. Do any of you wish to move any of these items to our regular agenda?
Please, no.
Ms. Myers, will you present the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. President. Item A, approval of natural gas agreement with Constellation Energy. Item B, approval of insurance agreement renewal with Reinhardt Walters Danner. Item C, approval of second amendment to lease agreement with American Towers. Item D, approval to purchase bulk rock salt for 2025 from Morton Salt. Item E, approval of payment of 2024 annual discharge fee for the wastewater treatment plant to the EPA. Item F, approval of submerged land lease for 1405 Cedar Point Road. Item G, approval of submission to ODNR Coastal Assistant Grants for Meg Street Pier. Item H, approval of second amendment to the EZ agreement with Firelands Federal Credit Union. Item I, approval of zone map amendment for 518 Jackson Street. Item J, approval of land bank purchase and sale agreement for 329 Meg Street. Item K, approval of renewal of Sandusky Transit System dispatching software with Voxter. Item L, approval of 2025 Transportation Services Agreement with Erie County Board of Developmental Disabilities. Item M, approval of 2025 Transportation Services Agreement with Cedar Point. Item N, approval of EMS Maintenance Agreement with Stryker Sales. Item O, approval of purchase of 4 vehicles from National Auto Fleet Group.
Commissioners, having heard these ordinances and resolutions, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman.
Murray.
I move for the adoption of these ordinances and resolutions pursuant to the section of our city charter indicated in the communication.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to note, I think I'm correct, Mr. Klein, did the cost of that salt come down?
Yes.
It's good to know that something's coming down in price, and we benefit from it.
I can recall not that long ago, we got spooked by the cost of salt going up so high, and then what the good Lord did is he stopped the snow for a couple of years, and our salt piled up. That expensive salt piled up, so now we get to use it. Ms. Myers, you call the roll on the motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinances and resolutions.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
Yes.
Those ordinances and resolutions are passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 1, please.
It is requested an ordinance be passed approving and adopting a new strategic plan for the city of Sandusky and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect under suspension of the rules as contained in and in accordance with Section 13 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
I
Waddington.
move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 13 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Orzak, this ordinance has your name behind it. Is there anything you want to add to this before we act on it?
No, it's the presentation that Mr. Pesta gave a meeting ago, and it'll go in effect, and we'll be ready to execute it moving forward for the next 5 years.
I agree. Commissioners, comments or questions? Ms. Myers, you poll the commission on that motion, please.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
That ordinance is passed, and we have a 5-year plan. Ms. Myers, you present item number 2, please.
It is requested a resolution be passed declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed The Landing project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of costs thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Murray.
I move for the adoption of this resolution pursuant to Section 14 of the city's charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Murray.
I remember when the airport closed, I guess everyone at the table would. It's been almost 11 years since any incoming pilot used the code for the airport, which is SKY. Mr. Klein probably knows that, and I expect we'll probably find that in the details of the park someday. But we were aghast and a little embarrassed as a community at the time that we lost our airport. It was maybe shame, maybe too strong a word, but we were terribly concerned about what would happen. We thought it was a bad omen for the city. Here we are 11 years later, and we see that it's been a fantastic development for the city. We have an enormous amount of investment that has occurred there, and I've said in the past, here now a 260-year-old city is going to carve out a new waterfront park. Where do you see that happen? You don't see that happen anywhere. So we lost Griffin Airport, but what we obtained in the end as a result of this destructive churn that is what is essential to every community, every thriving community, brought us something better. I'm so appreciative of the work that Mr. Klein and the consultants and your staff have done to get us to this point. It has been a lot of work. It has been a long haul. We are very fortunate to have very stable staff dedicated to this project that has stuck with it all this time. This has been, I think by your reckoning, Mr. Klein, an 8-year climb to get to where we are today. That's a long, long way to go. And so I express my personal gratitude for all of those who brought us here. And I'm looking forward to these bids. And I hope that this is something, I know this is something that will make a permanent change in the city's trajectory. This is something will be enjoyed for 100, if not hundreds of years in the future. So thank you.
Mr. Klein, I know that this has been quite a process to get us to this point, and I know that you have voluminous notes on this project, so if you would lead us through a brief presentation as to where we are and what we're doing right now, it would be appreciated.
Can I have Ms. Blair do it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't fill me in if you was going to do a presentation.
So yes, this is a project that's been going on. It was originally envisioned when the Metro Parks, the city and Cedar Fair got together to figure out what might happen on the water side of the sports center and the outdoor facility over there. So I'm going to be real brief with my presentation today, but what we have available is around $21 million of funding. The project, as you'll see tonight, the engineer's estimate is just under $18 million, and the inspection costs are just over $1.7 million. Now, those inspection costs, depending on what we award as far as the alternates, those could come down if we're not doing certain things because they don't need to spend as much time. So as we get into this, we're not planning on opening the bids until January timeframe. So we will have time at the beginning of the new year to award this project. So what you'll see here on this first slide is the end of the north-south runway at the Back Bay or East Sandusky Bay. And you can see the sports center on the right side of the screen and the outdoor sports facility on the left side of the screen on the east side of the city. This image shows the overall site plan. You can see the pathway coming in across Heminger Ditch on the west side or the left side of the image. On the right side is really the city's corporation limit on the eastern corporation limit. Okay, so here's the project. This is the various stages, and I want to thank Mr. Horstman for putting this together. It really is a good visual to kind of explain what's going on. You'll see the different colors. I'm going to go through each one of these. I'm going to go through exactly what is included in the base bid and also what is included in the alternate bids. And I do want to say that all of the images that you'll see on here, those renderings that you see, those are from 2017, 2018 timeframe. So I don't think too many people really cared to see the engineered drawings of these things. So we threw those images on, even though they're slightly different. In the base bid, as you can see, if I toggle back and forth a little bit, a few of those items come out. So the first item that would be in the base bid is the Heminger Trail. I see a lot of athletes walking from the sports center across Heminger Ditch along Cleveland Road right now, and that just scares me. So I'm really excited about this one. This is a piece that's going to be a boardwalk, and there's a bridge right in the middle where it gets the deepest, and that's going to be a safe passage to get from the east to the west and vice versa. That will end, as you can see on the image on the left in the background where it's red, you can see that it ends at a trail. That white is the trail and the black is the drive that goes back. It's not right at the road. It doesn't cross parallel to the road. It crosses at an angle. So it'll be a couple hundred feet up. It'll cross at an angle and it'll meet at a node. On the image on the bottom of the screen, you can see that's the entrance into the sports center facility on the western side of that facility now. That is actually, I'll be coming maybe in December or January or February timeframe to actually dedicate that as right-of-way. Right now, it's still just a driveway that's property that's owned by the city, so that will have to be right-of-way. And you can see this is called the landing loop. It encompasses the easternmost portion of the Sandusky Bay pathway, and it goes to the eastern corporation limit on the blue. You can also see the road in the dark, kind of a dark gray or black that is sinuous along the middle of the screen there, just north of the sports center. There's going to be parking. There's going to be a park entrance, there's lighting, we have all the utilities, the sewer, water, fiber. There will be a pavilion with a fireplace, a restroom, and the parking area also will be available for trailers because there is intended to be a kayak launch at this location as well. As you proceed farther up that north runway from that original image, you'll see the lighthouse as kind of the focal point of this project. I erroneously said 170 feet tall. That is really tall. It's really 70 feet with a 50-foot, a 360-degree walkway all around the top of it. The original discussions with this were how perfect the back bay would be for regattas and those types of things, and that this area would be perfect for the people that are overseeing and basically managing that regatta. So this is also going to be open to the public. There'll be some stairwells inside with a restroom on the bottom floor, and there will also be on the platform right outside of that, there would also be a fire pit on the east side that could be used and operated by city staff for events and things like that, because it gets really cold up in this area. Obviously, everybody knows that. And then on the northwest side of the lighthouse is where there'll be a seating area with some pergola-type structures along the waterfront. As you continue, nope,
one too far. So just off of the lighthouse, going to the west and then connecting back down to the trail to the southwest, what we tried to figure out how to eradicate all of the Phragmites, but that was just going to be a near impossible feat, and it's a lot of burning and different things like that. So during the design phase, we thought maybe we would just embrace it. And when I say embrace it, that doesn't mean we're going to condone it. That just means that we're going to build a tunnel through it, and it'll be these 9-10 foot high kind of Phragmites walls that eventually get to this point that you can see here that kind of has an amphitheater type seating on it. It looks really to the I don't think I can. And that's this area right here. Can you guys see the cursor, the mouse?
Not here.
No. Well, it's kind of on the northwest side of it, so it'll have a perfect view towards Cedar Point and the causeway and those types of images. If we go to the first alternate is the crib pier. This crib pier is designed a little differently than what you see here. It does have the unique features of gabion baskets, which is just big rock baskets. That way the fish passage and the water passage and those types of things. There's also some voids through there. It's about 5.5 feet above the high water mark, and it's about 180 feet long with a square deck on the far end of it. The next feature is very unique to this area, but not, I know there's a few more canopy walks throughout Ohio right now, but this is something that it's a 100-foot trail that's 25, 30 feet up into the trees. And this is the cost to put an elevator in the lighthouse was astronomical. So we thought, how can we get people that might not be able to climb all those stairs up into that canopy? So this was something that was ADA accessible. And it was also something that we could get people that might have a stroller or something like that that would want to get up into the canopy. And lastly is the elevated boardwalk, which is on the far east end. I believe in the communication, I said a boardwalk that stretches to the Western Corporation limit. That would have been really far. So this really only goes to the Eastern Corporation limit. It's above the wetlands and along the waterfront. And that would be the last feature, alternate number 3. So again, this is the entire project, and I know everybody's been talking about this, or a lot of people have been talking about this for years. So if anybody has any questions, if anybody wants to read all of the environmental reports about mussels and all the different animals that we're going to make sure that we're not disturbing throughout the project, I would love to sit down and talk.
Mr. Waddington.
What about honey? Duck honey, I mean, I'm going to walk on the,
Close.
yeah, I mean, it's like, remember former Commissioner Mylander had his house shot. What about the honey? What are we going to do about that? We had any conversations and wildlife and birding and?
Yes, we did talk to ODNR about that. This is something that the hunting in this area, the duck hunting and those things are permit only. So there might be seasons when we have to shore back the areas where people have access and those types of things. So we are going to have to make sure that there are time limits and we're coordinating with them at all times.
Comments or questions, Commissioner? Mr. Crable.
You referenced, I think, 3 things as alternates. Are these alternates included in this, or are they not and are yet to come at some future point?
So the alternates right now are included in the bid. I said that there was around $22 million or $21 million. We've only really, the base bid was just under 18 million, and then we had the 1.7 for the inspection. And that leaves around 1.5. So if the bids come in real low, we could award some of those other sections. We don't have to. The base bid is, you can't pick and choose from the base bid, but you can add the alternates if you want. The project will be designed to accommodate those in the future. If we have somebody that is interested in saying, you know what, I really want that crib pier because I want to put a water taxi on it and I'd like to donate $1 million, then we're probably going to move forward with something like that. So So if there are those things, it's going to be set up so that it can happen. The one caveat to that is the kayak launch is included in that crib pier, but that's something that is flexible enough that we can pull back into the base bid project if that's something that this body would like us to include in the base project. And I think one more thing I would like to add is on the far east side, we did carve out an area that was retained for private potential future private restaurants or coffee shops or things like that. That was retained by Cedar Fair, now Six Flags. You can see it on the right side of the screen. That is private parcel there. So if there is interest, that can be built, but that is not intended to be part of this project. So that'll still be the wetlands and the waterfront that it is now. On the east side, you can see it on the east side of that trail.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Kelly?
was the original estimate 29 million?
The original estimate was somewhere in the 20 million range.
Okay.
It was 18 to 22, 24 million, but that was for the pathway that went from Cedar Point Drive all the way down to Cleveland Road and to Heminger Ditch, which is now the $6 million that was moved out from the raise funding.
Okay. I didn't know if that was maybe, if it was 29, was cutting out those structures there. But in my next question is there any provision in place, or do we have any future planning provision for maintenance of all this property and what it's going to cost us?
Yes, I have a document that we've shared internally to try to figure out how to plan and make sure that we are maintaining it. It was a document that was put together by the design team as they were designing it to make sure that we knew exactly what was going to be short-term maintenance, long-term maintenance, and when there would be capital improvements as well throughout. Were intended capital improvements, something might last 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, those types of things.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioners?
If I might follow up on Commissioner Pajali's question, where would the funding come from for the maintenance? General fund? And do we know what the dollar value is at, on an annualized basis?
I have those numbers. I can't tell you exactly where it would be funded from, but the numbers, a lot of the stuff that was included in here is very low maintenance type items. I have the numbers. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I can certainly share those documents.
Please.
Mm-hmm.
Additional questions, Commissioner? Thank you, Mr. Klein. I think you probably covered both this item on the agenda and perhaps the next item on the agenda with that explanation. Ms. Byers, you poll the commission on that motion, please.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
That resolution is passed. Ms. Byers, you present item number 3, please.
Item number 3, ordinance 1. It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional services with Quality Control Inspection Incorporated of Garfield Heights, Ohio, for the landing project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Coons?
move for the adoption of these ordinance under suspension of the rules and in accordance with Section
Second.
14 of the city charter.
There's been a motion and a second already. Discussion. Mr. Klein, you have put together here a excellent team. Many of these names that are participating in this are names that we have used in the past and trust both their work and their judgment on things like this. So that bodes well for the success of getting the drawings right and getting them to us and perhaps getting good numbers. So Thank you for doing that. You've also done an excellent job of sharing with us exactly where these dollars are coming from, which remains critically important, I think, to at least all 7 of the people sitting at this table. Ms. Myers, do you poll the commission on item 3, ordinance number 1?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Waddington?
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present ordinance number 2 of item number 3.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a second amendment to the agreement for professional design services with Environmental Design Group, LLC of Akron, Ohio, for the landing project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Jolly.
I would move to adopt ordinance number 2 under item 3, under section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Myers, will you poll the commission on that motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Waddington?
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present ordinance number 3 of item number 3.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional services with Osborne Engineering of Cleveland, Ohio for the landing project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to adopt ordinance number 3 under item 3 in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Myers, do you poll the commission on that motion, please?
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Now on the ordinance.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, will you provide item number 4, please?
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional design services with GPD Group of Cleveland, Ohio for the Mills Creek Golf Course Bridge Replacement Project, and declaring this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Coons.
move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules and in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I'd like to ask the maintenance, let's see here, head of, the maintenance bridge is going to stay at hole 6, correct? That's not going nowhere? Okay. So, and then do we have an idea like when this work would happen? Is it going to be prior to the season? So I keep hearing different things, from the players out there.
Yes, we were planning on keeping 6 there because that's access from that side. I believe the contract has them designing by the end of February, and we're hoping to, or by the end of January, sorry, hoping to have the bridge in place as close to the start of the season as we possibly can, because as you know, you or I are getting the most questions about getting this bridge replaced. Yeah.
And then I guess a follow-up, I can, Mr. Chairman. Why don't we, there's a creek that runs, you're aware of that, along from 7 to 6. Since the pond shrunk down, it used to be big years ago, and then it could head back out to the bay. Why can't we cut these trees that are laying in the creek area? That's causing a lot of the flooding, in my opinion. I walked that a few times, on number 6 there.
Mm-hmm.
That backs that water up, and hole 5's been 2-3 feet of water. The whole hole's been covered.
Yeah, that'll be part of the floodplain project that we have going on with the H2 Ohio funds, is to alleviate some of that and make sure that that the creek flows much better through that area, and also helping with the water quality through there to the lake.
Mr. Rolling, did you share the time frame Mr. Waddington asked about timeframe. This is going to happen, presuming we got a good design, presuming we get it bid, going to happen this summer, next fall? When would this
No,
happen?
I'd like to have the bridge in place by the start, as close to the start of the season as we can.
So by spring?
Correct.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Let's shoot for that.
Because as, Mr. Chairman, it is a hazard, because if you play 5, then you got to drive back around 6, and you're peaking, hope to God you don't get hit with somebody's tee-ball. You know, that was the dangerous spot. I know it's a lot of the older guys, so you don't care for that.
Mr. Murray shared with me at noon today that he wondered what happened to the concept of a couple railroad ties and a piece of plywood for a bridge. But I take it we're going to be a little more sophisticated than that.
It'll be much more sophisticated. Yes.
Thank you. We won't let Mr. Murray play a role in building that. Thank you.
I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah. Cost cutting anyway.
Build some houses out
Additional comments, Commissioner?
It'd be cheaper.
Mr. Myers, you poll the commission on that motion, please.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 5, please.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional design services with Schmid Architects Incorporated of Sandusky, Ohio, for the criteria engineer for the Sandusky Recreation Center and design engineer for the tennis courts project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Got a motion and a second discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
glad to see we're involving some local folks working on this. Schmidt Architects.
We are, and the principal of Schmidt Architects happens to be with us tonight, so if you have any detailed questions, I'm sure he can answer those. Commissioners, any questions for the architect? Mr. Murray?
More a general comment. It's been a long process. We continue to creep closer and closer to potentially having a rec center. I would point out that we're hopeful that will happen. These will allow us to figure out what the price is. Mr. Brady has sometimes said you can't get sticker shock until you see the sticker, and I think that's true in this instance. So this will take us closer. We will get, from this, we will receive proposals to build the rec center with a price tag, and then we can determine whether we move forward. So this drives us a huge step forward to seeing exactly whether this is something we can afford or not. So glad we're doing this.
Additional comments, Commissioners? I echo Mr. Waddington's sentiment about our opportunity here to buy local. I have a long history of working for and with Mr. Schmidt, and I can tell you that I sat in on the first meeting after he bid this project, and he surrounded himself with what I will call the A-team. Every person that he's involving in this, in the engineering end of this and the inspection end of it, are the best you can look for. And as important as the criteria architect is, the person that carries as much weight as that is the inspection company, because they will hold whomever is the successful bidder on this to the criteria that the architect provides. So I think we have a good model that we're building here, and I'm looking forward to a successful project and getting a sticker that we can all live with. Additional comments, Commissioners? Mr. Crable.
Yeah, my concerns about this project are pretty well documented at this point, so I won't go over that. This motion will have my support only because I think it gets us to a point where we will have the information necessary to make an informed decision about whether this is the site and we can afford, what it is that we're building, and whether what we're building actually answers the needs of the community. Although there's the motion is to approve a $919,570 budget. A little over 600,000 of that probably won't be engaged by the time we are able to actually get that information and make an informed decision. So you'll have my support on this.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioners? Ms. Myers, you poll the commission on that motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Wantington?
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 6, please.
It is requested a resolution be passed approving and ratifying the submission of a grant application to the Ohio Department of Transportation for state fiscal year 2025 Urban Transit Program grant funds for the Sandusky Transit System and declaring this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman, I would
Alan.
move to adopt this resolution in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Myers, you poll the commission on that resolution, please.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
Yes.
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Ms. Grable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
That resolution is passed. Ms. Myers, you present the last item, item number 7, please.
It is requested a resolution be passed declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed HVAC replacement for the Amtrak Station and Sandusky Transit System Maintenance Garage Project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of costs thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Coons.
move for the adoption of this resolution under item 7, under suspension of the rules and in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Myers, you poll the commission on that motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
Yes.
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Wantington?
Yes.
That resolution is passed. Concludes our regular agenda. We'll turn to our city manager for his report.
Good evening, Commissioners, audience, and staff. The Sandusky Fire Department would like to thank the Sandusky Elks Lodge 285 for a donation of $3,000. This donation did not come with any specific instructions, but will be used to replace equipment to be determined later. If I can get a motion to accept that donation.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Without objection, motion be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved for our thanks for the $3,000.
Yes.
Thank you to Ter Haas, who donated $400 to the Memorial Tree Fund at Oakland Cemetery. A maple tree will be planted this fall to honor her late parents, Judith and David Haas. If we can get a motion to accept that donation.
So moved.
Been a motion.
Second.
And I think there's a second. Without hearing objection, that motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved with our thanks.
I'd like to request a motion to give permission to Chief Oliver to apply for the ODNR Marine Patrol Grant for the Police Department boat operations in 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Without objection, that motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, that motion is approved.
Thank you. He'll send some legislation soon. On December 8th, the Commons of Providence will be sponsoring a charity breakfast in support of the Sandusky Fire Department's Shoe Fund. The breakfast will be held at Station 1, 600 West Market Street from 9 a.m. until 12 p.m. To date, in 2024, the Shoe Fund has provided 146 pairs of shoes to Sandusky children in need. Please join Sandusky Fire Department and the Commons of Providence in supporting the SHU Fund for its 72nd year. I know Chief D'Amico has been instrumental in the SHU Fund for, I think, 20 years or something, he said.
Not quite 20 years.
A long time, but it's a good event. I've been there the last several years, and Commons of Providence really does a fantastic job with that meal. So, general reminder for property owners of vacant dwellings: if your dwelling is expected to remain vacant and unoccupied during the winter months, we highly recommend that you contact the city to turn off the water. This will help prevent your water lines from freezing and breaking, which would lead to costly repairs for the property owner. Customer accounting office can be reached at 419-627-5893 to schedule an appointment for water disconnection. The next Finance Committee meeting will be on Friday, December 6th, 8 a.m. at City Hall. Public Works, the contractors for the 2 projects at MacArthur Park and for East Perkins Waterline plan to mobilize to begin construction activities next week. The leaf collection is on schedule. Refer to www.cityofsandusky.com/leaf collection for dates for your area. And lastly, Wheels Park is now open to the public. We ask that all users of the park stay off the dirt areas until grass is established. A ribbon cutting has been planned for Monday, December 16th. All are invited to attend. That concludes my report. I'll take any questions that you have.
Questions or comments for the city manager, Commissioners? Now we'll move to items of old business. Any items of old business, Commissioners? Any items of new business? New business, Commissioners. I have 2 housekeeping items. I will ask for a motion for a public hearing for the natural gas program for our meeting on December the 9th.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, that motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, that motion is approved. That public hearing is set. I also need a motion for a public hearing for the budget for our meeting on December 9th.
Excuse me, Mr. Brady. That public hearing for the natural gas, we need to have 2, one at 2 o'clock and one at 5 o'clock that evening.
2 o'clock and 5 o'clock.
Yes.
That will cover the requirement for 2 public hearings.
Yes.
Excellent. I need a motion for a public hearing for the budget for our December 9th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Hearing no objection, the motion will be approved, and I hear no objection, so that motion is approved. That public hearing is set. Additional items of new business, Commissioners? If not, are there any comments, public comments on any item that pertains to city business? Please step to the podium and share with us your name and address and items that pertain to city business.
Good evening. My name's Terry Burton, 2212 Milan Road. I know all of you guys, either through volunteering or a little bit of mentoring back in the day. And I want to start off positive about what our city's doing. When I moved back home after my adventures overseas in 2014, I was able to buy one of the land bank houses. That allowed me and my family to have home ownership in a city that we love, in a city that's growing, that's everything is just getting better and better. We now have filled that house with 2 children who go to school, give back to the community, go to church, just all of the positive things that are happening that has turned this city from what it was when I grew up here in the early 1990s to the mid-1990s is amazing. The things that you're doing, the things that, how we're growing, how we're becoming more than just a little town on the lake, we're a destination. That's the positive part. The negative part is, about 15 days ago, I had a very disgusting interaction with the police officer in the city. This isn't the proper forum to get into the details of what happened, to get into where we're going, what's the next step forward. Most of you know I have a United States military security clearance. I also have a NATO and a Ukrainian security clearance, which were brought into question and jeopardy by the actions of one police officer. I started thinking about how can I formally complain? How can I make my voice heard? As somebody who is let's just say privileged, to be treated in that regard, to be treated with that kind of disrespect, to have the officer show that little integrity for his job and his profession and for his accountability, shook me to the core. When I went through to try to figure out, well, who do I complain to? We don't have any civilian police oversight that I'm aware of. I've scoured the internet, I've talked to the police department, and I just want to put this bug in the commission's ear, that we have some wonderful community boards, the cemetery board, the housing board, things like that. I would like you to consider starting a police, maybe not an oversight board, but a civilian complaint board. Because if it comes back to when you call the police force, oh, just talk to the chief. And we know that the officers like to consider themselves sheepdogs, but who's the shepherd? Who's watching over the internal affairs of our department? And it was just something that I think I would like for you to consider. Is there a board that can be created where civilians can talk to other civilians, civilians can look at and take these things to the chief as a board, instead of maybe someone who's not articulate or someone who doesn't understand the system or someone who maybe has felonies or doesn't trust the system. So I'm just here to ask, maybe there's something you guys can do to, I don't want to call it a buffer, but I want to call it a partnership where a civilian can hear the complaints, the issues, the problems, the positives as well, and can work hand in hand with the police department. I worked on the civilian complaint board in Oakland, California, and it was amazing how many small fires were put out by there being, this was, even if the hearing didn't go to the civilian complainer's way, because he was able to present this to people who he didn't see as authoritarian. A lot of things that could have gotten a lot worse were able to be brought down. So it was just an idea that I wanted to present. Like I said, it's not the proper forum for me to get into what happened or anything like that, but it takes a lot for me to be disappointed. And I was extremely disappointed in this officer's conduct and where we went from there and where this is still going. So instead of just coming and crying about it, I wanted to give you a possible solution, that this might be something that would improve the city. I guess that's really all I have to say. So
Thank you
I appreciate the time.
Additional, additional comments from the public regarding any item that pertains to city business? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned.